The way I see it, Mexico has a lot of positive momentum, so much so that I've started buying stocks in Mexico, and today I'm going to tell you why. So we're going to go through a number of reasons why I think Mexico is worth considering for your portfolio. Nomad Capitalist is not an investment advisor. I am not a stock picker. I don't know your investment objective. So this is purely what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Obviously, you want to do your own research and consider what you need to know. But my macro perspective as an investor is what's changing in the world, which places are heading in the right direction, which places have positive fundamentals, even if they're not perfect. Even if they're not rich countries, we're always looking for places that are heading up because that's how you find the next Singapore, the next South Korea, the next whatever it may be. And I'm not saying Mexico is the next Singapore, but I think there's potential. Let me give you a couple of reasons why. The first is currency appreciation. If you go back to 2014, that's when the peso started to go into free fall. For a long time, it was 8-1 against the dollar. Then it was 10-1. Then it kind of went down to like 11 or 12-1. And then it kind of fell off. And what's actually interesting is the low came around the time that Trump was inaugurated in early 2017. There had been a bit of a drop in the peso when Trump was elected. Obviously, talked a lot about Mexico is going to pay for the wall. Yet, after that inauguration, the peso started to appreciate. And so if you look at about the last year, the peso is up about 10-11%. If you look at since that Trump inauguration, it's up about 25%. I was interviewed a couple months ago on CBS News in the United States, and they said, why is this happening? What's going on? And I think you have a lot of trade going to Mexico. Yes, some of that is coming from Asia now through Mexico and into the U.S., but there's a lot of stuff happening in Mexico. And as a reminder, I think a lot of people, when it comes to this international stuff we talk about at Nomad Capitalist, they say, oh, I don't like the fact that Mexico is building the cars, or that they're making this and they're making that, and it gets to come across the border. Well, number one, Donald Trump renegotiated NAFTA, whether you like that or not. And so as an investor, you can have ethical considerations. I'm not going to invest in the U.S. war machine stocks, just don't want to do that myself. But, you know, if you're going to be a good investor, you can't focus on how I'd like the world to be. Mexico is developing more industry. They're harnessing more resources, and I think they're becoming more independent, and I think those things are driving currency appreciation. Certainly you do see a lot more nomads. What I said when Trump was running, why would you move to Canada if Trump gets elected? Obviously everyone always threatens they're going to move to Canada. Move to Mexico instead. Better food, nicer weather, the people are nice. That is some teeny tiny factor that people are going there and bringing their dollars, bringing their pounds, bringing their euros. But just in general, a lot of industry that's caused the currency to go up. So for me, I look at Mexican stocks as a play on the currency, where I get growth in some high quality, large cap companies. I'll talk to you next about yields. But I'm also getting exposure to the peso. And you can trade in a brokerage account like Interactive Brokers. There's some considerations if you're trading in other markets like the U.S. that maybe you should be concerned which brokerage account you're using. We help people with their estate taxes and that kind of stuff. So that's an area that we focused on at Nomad Capitalist. What are the inheritance taxes, estate tax complications of investing in various countries, with the U.S. being one of the worst if you're not properly structured. But just to buy the stocks, any number of different brokerages will allow you to do that. You send in your dollars, your euros, whatever, you convert to pesos very cheaply, you can buy the stocks. Higher yields are another reason why I like stocks in Mexico. As I've talked before, I've got a part of money set aside, part of which is a dividend portfolio. It's a more conservative portfolio, being that I have a business, which is a growth portfolio. And so part of a dividend portfolio is going to include bank stocks, for example. You can go and buy higher yielding bank stocks. The dividend tax depends on where you live, but in my case, it is lower than pretty much all the other countries except for the tax-free dividend countries in Asia. So you can look at a more stable, strong bank like a Banorte. They're going to pay you about 4.5%. It might be an equivalent to a JP Morgan or something like that. If you look at the big 4 or 5 top banks in the U.S., they're going to pay you 2, 2.2, 2.7, so you're getting a stronger yield there depending on your living situation, i.e. if you're not a U.S. citizen and you're maybe paying a higher withholding tax rate. Let's say you moved to Dubai and you didn't consider that the dividend withholding tax rate there is higher on your U.S. stocks. You're going to get a better tax rate potentially, and you're going to get a higher dividend rate. If you look at some of the faster growing, kind of up and coming, smaller bank stocks like a Banco del Bajío, I think it's like the 7th or 8th largest bank in the country. It's really grown quickly. You're going to get closer to like 7 or 8% on some of those yield. And again, more tax friendly in the yield, higher yield, that's a good thing. Also on some of the consumer staples, in retail stocks, like a Walmart, for example. What's the prognosis for Walmart? Is it better in the U.S. or is it better in Mexico? Look at some of the craziness that's happening in the U.S. and how it's affecting retailers. All the thefts. I mean, that may be relatively coastal, but I look at the growth market in a place like Mexico. I see that the fact of a rising middle class. I'll come to that in a moment. You're getting 2.5 times the dividend on Walmart Mexico than you are on Walmart in the U.S. And so you can get higher yields. If you want to get cash, you can do that. Now, it's not just cash why I'm investing there. I think you got a lot of growth. And so what we talk about here at Nomad Capitalist is what's the next place? People have heard of Mexico. During the pandemic, a lot of folks started moving there. We've been helping our clients move there, or at the very least get residence permits there for some time, get a residence permit, work towards citizenship. I think Mexico, just across the board, is a great place to have in your portfolio because you don't even have to live there necessarily to maintain a residence permit. It's not necessarily a place that you want to bank. You might want to buy bank stocks, but it's not really a place where you want to bank. But having immigration access to Mexico, as it's become more and more popular, and as in return, they become a little bit less flexible with how long you can stay there as a tourist, I think it's a good thing to do. And it's because of that growth. If you were to get Mexican citizenship for yourself, or let's say you're planning on having a child and you gave birth in Mexico, that child was automatically a Mexican citizen, they're born on the soil, I think you're setting up yourself or you're setting up your child for opportunities in the coming decades, which will be very interesting as Mexico cleans up more things there and has more trade ties, not only with the U.S. now as its biggest trading partner, but it's doing more with China, it's doing more within the region of Latin America. And so I like the idea, not only as an investor, but just as someone who wants to be diversified, as having that connection to Mexico. So not only a good place to have stocks, and I'm going to go to the growth part in a minute, if you want to learn how to build things like residence and citizenship portfolios to make sure you and your family always have places to go, that's what we do here. We don't help you pick stocks. We can help you with the brokerage account. We have guys who can help you with the tax setup to make sure you're fully optimized and reducing your taxes as much as possible. But if you go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn how, if you have $1 million liquid net worth or more, or you're a high earner, how we can help you and your family get your residences and citizenship so that when the growth in a country like Mexico happens, you might 5 years from now be a citizen. You have your old citizenship, now you have your Mexican citizenship, you might be able to partake in more opportunities. So, growth in Mexico, income levels and living standards in Mexico rising steadily since NAFTA. That was about 30 years ago at this point. So you've now got about 45% of the population that's in the middle class. Obviously, if you look back during COVID, a lot of countries were locking down. Mexico largely stayed open. Part of the rationale for that was you have a lot of people who are in the informal economy. They have to go out, they have to work. That still does exist in Mexico. And I think a lot of people ignore countries like Mexico. They look at what we talk about and they say, why would I do that? Why would I go to these countries? I think they're probably focusing too much on they crossed the border to Tijuana in 1998, or they see that informal economy. That's a smaller and smaller part of what Mexico is. So the middle class is about 45%. Plans on by the end of this decade or the early 2030s to add about an extra almost 4 million households to that. So you've got 120, 130 million people down there. You're below the OECD average. So the OECD is kind of the high-tax lobbying group of mostly developed countries. Colombia's in it, Mexico's in it, a bunch of Western countries are in it. The middle classes in those countries are bigger, but Mexico's is growing faster. You're actually seeing it in some Western countries almost kind of shrink. There's just much less opportunity. When you read articles, and even when you go to there, I mean, we've held multiple events in Mexico. We help our clients go to Mexico. When you just go there, people have an optimism that you don't see in a place like the United States. That's a positive indicator, and so things are moving in the right direction. The middle class there between $9,000 and 20-some, low 20s thousand dollars. So that is less. That's why you have industry developing, and so over time that will grow, and you want to be investing earlier. So you are seeing more nearshoring after COVID. Certainly what we're seeing just in terms of hiring people, we've put a greater emphasis on Latin America. I can't say Mexico has worked out particularly well for us compared to Argentina, Colombia, other countries in Latin America. But I think for a lot of folks, Mexico is a great place to hire. You're seeing more capital come in. You're seeing people come back. Yes, again, if you turn on your television in the United States, if you watch Fox News, if you watch the news, there are people coming in. I don't think it's really that many Mexicans anymore. They're coming in from all over the place. They're coming in from Central America. And there's always going to be some of that, including from Mexico. But the point is the numbers are heading in the right direction. The anecdotal fact that some folks are crossing the border, or that you went to Tijuana and seemed like things weren't going so well 25 years ago. You're seeing more nearshoring. People like our company are hiring there. You're seeing more manufacturing being developed there. And again, it's not all going to the U.S. Big impact from the U.S., always going to be that way. But I think increasingly what you're seeing, besides, by the way, the seal of approval from a lot of nomads and people who've gone there, I mean, Mexico has really become an acceptable place to go. If I would have told my father 10 years ago, go and live in Mexico, you'd think I'm crazy. But people are watching. They're seeing a lot of people moving to Mexico, and now he spends part of his time in Mexico. The nomad dad, he's in Mexico. And so what you're also seeing from Mexico, the fourth reason I like this, is there's more independence. They're going out and saying, yeah, we'll do business with the U.S. But they're doing what I'm seeing a lot of the countries I like doing, saying, let's be diversified. Again, we can do stuff within Latin America. Some of the neighbors may not have as much spending power in Central America, but other places in Latin America do. Increasing trade with China, Canada. And so you're seeing a bit more diversification. And they're kind of the feeling, I've been talking about this with people there for close to 10 years. There's the idea that Mexico doesn't want to be reliable and almost want to be pushed by the U.S. I've talked about why Nomad Capitalist Live, at least for the foreseeable future, won't be in Mexico. There's a number of reasons there. But one of the reasons is if you have people from emerging countries who want to come, they get a little bit of gruff when they go to get a visa or when they arrive, because Mexico has been so pushed by the U.S. to make sure people don't come in, to where the chief financial officer of companies or where some guy flying in business class is treated like they're the risk. And so I think that Mexico is increasingly wanting to be independent, doing more deals. You can get to a certain point by being reliant on the U.S. I don't want to be reliant on the U.S. myself, and I don't think Mexico should be either. So they've got a lot of resources. That's the fifth point. I think you'll see more independence. Look at a company like a Group of Mexico, for example. They control a lot of copper, trains, seaports, all the logistics, and also they have stakes in other copper mines, I think in their case, for example, like in Peru. But you've got some good resources companies. You've got some good logistics companies. You've got some good consumer companies and a growing middle class. You've got some good banks. I'm not saying you should bank in Mexico yourself. That's a common misconception. Oh, I want to get a residence in Mexico. I should move all my money there. Oh, who wants a bank in Mexico? I'm not saying to bank in Mexico. I'm not even saying to live in Mexico. I'm saying those are 5 reasons. Resources, independence, growth, higher yields, and currency appreciation, and the play on that. Those are 5 reasons why I have picked up a couple of stocks in Mexico and added them to my portfolio. Now, as always, and any savvy investor should know this, I haven't gone all the way in on Mexico. It's a part of the portfolio. And generally speaking, I do own some top quality U.S. companies that I believe in. But, in general, I try and keep, for a number of reasons, my U.S. stock exposure down. And so I peeled up a few things that I felt grew enough or weren't paying enough of a dividend anymore. I sold some of that stuff off, and this is where I got in. So you can play the stocks. You can also play, if this is going to be a greater investment market in the future, having a residence permit, having a citizenship, whether it's in Mexico or any other country you think has a good future, is going to be a good thing to do. Again, Mexico, if you're born there, you're a citizen by birth. If you have family from there, you could possibly go and claim your citizenship even if you were born in the U.S. or somewhere else. Do that if you can. If not, it's not a bad idea to have a residence permit. Could be Mexico. We've had some people recently getting residence permits in Argentina. In Latin America, you often don't have to live there to get the residence permit. And so I might look at an approach of buying some stocks, having some immigration, potentially moving towards citizenship in the future if I can get that. That's something that we can help you do at Nomad Capitalist, but that will further allow you more opportunities to invest in the country. If you want to learn about that, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. If you want to learn about emerging markets opportunities, we've got about half a dozen experts coming to Nomad Capitalist Live this September. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/live and learn how you can join us.